Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in on this Monday evening. And welcome back to Refugee Matters. This is a series where we unpack topics that impact folks of the refugee experience here in the United States. I'm Nancy Flores, Deputy Director at the National Partnership for New Americans, NPNA, as well as the New American Voters Campaign lead. So I'm really excited for today's conversation, especially as so many of us are getting ready for a really, really important day tomorrow. So today's conversation is going to focus on, different elements of the New American Voters Campaign, and as we are in the home stretch for our Get Out the Vote efforts. So needless to say, tomorrow is a really big day for our country. It's election day. It's the midterm elections that come around every 2 years, where voters will decide on so many important issues and measures that will affect our day-to-day lives. So during today's Refugee Matters segment, our guests will talk about their efforts to get out the vote among naturalized refugee and immigrant communities. And we'll get into some real talk about how tomorrow's outcome can affect the future of our democracy. I think that we've been hearing those words throughout the year a lot, but when we're really thinking about the outcomes, what can happen as a result of the election, these words tend to grab different meanings. So want to just preface our conversation with that. So for those of you who are just joining, welcome. We hope that today's conversation will be a boost of energy that we all need as we head into such an important election day tomorrow. So with that, I'd like to introduce our amazing speakers and get our conversation started. And if you have any questions for our speakers or anything like that, feel free to put them in the chat here. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our speakers, and you'll hear from them individually in just a second. Fartoon Wali, who is the Executive Director at Isaroon in Minnesota. Welcome, Fartoon. We are also joined by Afifa Khalik, SEIU Florida Public Services Union. Welcome, Afifa. And we are also joined by Fatima Saidi, Development and Relations Manager for Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition in the state of Maine. So we've got Midwest here, as well as Florida, and then the East Coast. So you'll be hearing perspectives from all over the country today. So we'll get right into it. So sticking here in the Midwest to my neighbor here, as I'm based in Wisconsin, our neighbors here on the west of our state. We'll start with Minnesota. So Fartoon, the question is for you. So let's talk a little bit about what's at stake in this election. We are doing everything we can all across the country, online, in person, weekend, weekday, to get our folks to vote. And why is it so important that folks vote in this election? Can you give us a little bit about your perspective, specifically in Minnesota, and how Isaroon is finding creative ways to engage immigrant and refugee voters?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to join you. And I appreciate the work that you do and all the organizations. As you know, Minnesota has large immigrant population and refugees. Isaroon does work with Somali women and their families, and our goal is to help them out of poverty. And you know, immigrants have generational that if the first generation does well, the second generation and beyond, there's outward mobility in economics. What is unique to Minnesota is that there are huge income inequality that exists between the Piper community and the community at large, which Somali community and refugees and immigrants fit in. What is at stake this year and every year is how do we pay attention to and hold accountable to our elected officials, but also how do we make sure our families are voting? As you know, when someone is worried about their food and the roof over their head, the least thing that they're thinking about is how do I vote for someone? That's the survival instinct is not part of I need to be engaged civically. So what is at stake right now in Minnesota also close to $67 billion of surplus that Minnesota has, and who is going to be how in refugees and immigrants in Minnesota can be given their share. We always talk about the disparity of Black and Brown and refugees and immigrants, but as you can look at Bruce Corey, who's a professor at Arcadia, show us how much income and tax and wealth we contribute to our state in billions. And so what is at stake is like our families showing up and voting and coming to the table and really showing up their power, not only the contribution that they're doing to the healthcare workforce, to the regular workforce, to the factories and everywhere else that our refugees and immigrants work. And so it's a lot of stake. This year is more critical so because the second generation and third generation are graduating college. Half of them are not graduating even in high school, most of them. So there's a huge disparity in Minnesota in our community. What we're doing is really, this run has a food shelf. We serve about 350 millimeters, excuse me. And so we talk one-on-one, what's going on, how are you going to vote? And we've been planting the seed that the day early voting is important, but the day of, we have transportation that we can provide. Moms and dads who work full time, we can say you have right to take that day either off as a PTO, or you can ask your employee that you need to leave early due to the transportation or other issues to vote. Well, we also identified that most of the elders of refugees and immigrants go into adult day centers. Women also work at childcare centers. So we've been actively seeking these companies to say, hey, make sure that each elder votes that day, make it an activity. You have transportation to pick them up, take them to the polling. We were also actively seeking the younger generation, the 17 and above, which are more, they speak the language, they don't have a language barrier, they're very tech savvy. And we've been talking to them saying, hey, auntie, hey, habo, which means auntie in Somali, please go vote and stand up for our families. And so that we're nervous, but we're also hopeful that this year is going to be the year that we all of us vote and um, we are coming out in drones and getting our everyone vote. And I know other Latino community, Hmong Americans, other West African, the Karens, every one of us is doing everything they can to get our families vote.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Fortune, the wonderful work happening in Minnesota. And, I love what you've said. Some of these strategies of outreach are really, and I think you said this earlier, they're pretty basic, right? We need to, like, who do our communities trust? They trust people they know, they trust people they love, they trust people in their community. So that's definitely who we want to be the messengers, and what we've seen is effective. So thank you so much for sharing that work, and we'll keep the conversation going here. Next, I want to turn it over to Afifa, Chief of Staff at SCIU in SCIU Florida Public Services Union. So Afifa, can you tell us a little bit about some important ballot measures that are going to be impacting the refugee and immigrant communities in Florida? I think that this is a really important point that we're going to see across the country, and we're seeing some of these gain some national attention, such as Prop 300 in Michigan, Prop 308 in Arizona. So there's so many different ballot measures that are really important in this election that can impact reproductive rights, in-state tuition for undocumented students, but also housing. So I want to turn it to you so you can tell us what's on the ballot specifically as it pertains to really important ballot measures in Florida.
So I think this year, fortunately, we do not have a huge list of ballot measures that sometimes create a lot more confusion because the language is difficult and people tend not to understand sometimes the ballot measures. But there are issues on the ballot, right? This year also. I was thinking, like, what is the one thing which is the first thing that you need when we talk about inclusion of immigrants in our communities, and especially refugees who are coming over. They're new, they don't may not have a lot of economic resources that they are bringing to this country, and they are, they want to not only survive but thrive in our society, like, you know. So the first thing, the human instinct will go towards creating a shelter, right? That I have a safe space where I'm staying with my kids and my families in a safe neighborhood in affordable housing, right? Unfortunately, in Florida, housing is an emergency crisis, right? We have seen over 37% increase in the cost of housing overall in Florida in just last year alone, right? And the situation is still worsening, especially after Hurricane Ian, where we have lost some stock in some of the major counties also. So and it was like a hurricane that swept through the state. So there's like from all the way from Naples all to the East Coast, we have seen a lot of damage. So that has impacted again the housing market and housing crisis. So there is a demand size issue where there's a lot more demand coming in, and then on the supply side there's nothing, right? So there are like different kind of ballot mayors that are on the ballot. um, Two of them I would really like to talk about is the rent stabilization in Orange County. Unfortunately, a court declared that rent stabilization as an emergency mayor cannot be voted on, even though it's on the ballot, because it was too late to take it off the ballot. But why is it critical that people still vote for that ballot mayor? Is because that mayor will show like the need of the communities and how much they need housing, right? And the stabilization of the rental market. We have seen the landlords were increasing rent by 20%, sometime with very short notices, as if like we have like, you know, bank accounts filled with money that can afford that kind of increases. So that ballot mayor will be really good to build that narrative in the state that housing is an emergency, it's a crisis, and we need to address it. The second ballot mayor is in Palm Beach County, that talks about the affordable housing construction, right? As I said, there is a demand side issue, but then there's a supply side issue too, because there are not many affordable housing units, right? There are more people coming to the state, and then there are not many affordable housing units. So this is workforce housing construction that will allocate $200 million from, like, you know, property tax. There's a very small amount that will go towards that housing uh, construction of those housing unit, over 20,000 that we are anticipating that if they are built, they will be constructed. So those are critical measures. What we are doing in the state is talking to our immigrant community members, our refugee members who are new American voters, to get the vote out. Again, all of the stuff that Fartun was talking about, we're texting them, we're emailing them, we're calling them. We have done press conferences and events. In Florida, we have made over 40,000 calls, sent 40,000 mailers across the state to talk to our immigrant community, especially on the refugee and APS side, to talk about those mayors, and also like why is it so critical for them to vote this election cycle, because it's not just about candidates, right? It's about the issues that we care about. For instance, housing, because without housing we cannot even talk about inclusion. The economic injustices that we face, all of that stuff is associated with housing. If we do not have affordable housing in urban centers where communities are mostly living, then we are talking about the job market crisis, because then there are no bus drivers that, you know, in the schools, because they can't afford to live where they are working. So then we are creating a transportation crisis because people have to move back and forth. And then we are talking about like cars and gas prices, all of that stuff start with like a very center, which is housing. And that's what's on the ballot, and we are encouraging people to get the vote out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Afifa. And you know, you're right. I think that a lot of times when we think about these really important elections, we think about political parties or we think about candidates, but it's so much bigger than that. So when you're showing up to vote, you are deciding on these really critical issues. So thank you so much for your work in Florida, and sending you our best, and hopefully really record turnout tomorrow. All right, so we'll keep it moving here, and want to turn it over now, direct us over to the East Coast. We're heading over to Maine with our next speaker. So, we've heard about housing and also what to do with deciding, having a say in how surplus dollars get invested, as Fortuna was mentioning. So all of these really important issues that are happening, that are being decided tomorrow. But I know that in Maine, you all are have a different sort of situation, a different context in which you are engaging new American voters. So just to give our folks here a little bit of context. So the state of Maine is currently 95% white across the state. Although immigrants and refugees are growing, they're definitely not a majority as of now. But we're seeing a lot of really great inroads in terms of representation. And so I want to turn it now over to Fatima Sadie, Development and Relations Manager at Merck, who's going to tell us a little bit about how Merck is reaching, what Merck is doing to reach new American voters, and how you all are mobilizing these new citizens. And also want to send a huge, huge congratulations from all of us to Fatima, who not only just became a citizen, but also voted for the very first time. So congratulations. And with that, tell us a little bit about what y'all are doing there in Maine.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nancy. It was a humbling experience and very powerful and humbling and very emotional. I cried at the booth, so it was very moving for me. I think what I want to reflect before I answer your question. The reason is like when we are talking about, I was keep seeing the title, Refugees Matter, Refugees Matter. But when you think about immigration, it's a spectrum. There are people, immigrants who have a lot of privileges compared to the other ones. People like me who can go vote, who can voice their opinion. Now I'm a US citizen. I have privileges. I can bring my family. I can do those. But then there are people who are refugees. But there are people who stand in this spectrum behind, even lower and more vulnerable than refugees. And those are asylum seekers, people who don't really have that much voice or the freedom, when we are talking about crisis, or people who are undocumented, who are underdocumented. So these are the people that really need our help tomorrow, going on their behalf in voting. And when it comes to Maine, we are no different than any other state. I think housing is a crisis, is an emergency. It is painful to even think about it. But on the other hand, Maine is also one of the very few states that we do not have any kind of immigrant or refugee or asylum seeker resettlement at the state level. So, and we have a governor's race this year, which is very critical, deciding who is going to be the next person. Are we going to have the next few years of literally living in hell, or we're going to still be fighting, trying to convince them? So it's not that it's scary to think about tomorrow's. I'm excited, but at the same time I'm very nervous. But the other thing, what we have been doing, and as you mentioned, Nancy, we are a very white state. So we have been doing in the past 2 years two things. One, we have been working a lot with our white allies, white partners, through churches and through mainstream organization to register and reach out to them, literally that these are the things that matter to us. These are our rights. If you want men to look diverse, if you want us to be here, you have to stand behind us. You have to walk the walk with us. You have to support us. You have to voice our opinion when we do not have the voice, literally. And then there are other parts of it, because we are a coalition serving immigrants from near Canada to the south, to the very south. So we have been trying to for the first time in the past 2 years, working with all our ECBOs, ethnic-based organization, just registering people to become a U.S. citizen. First of all, who is eligible, and then registering the ones who are eligible to vote. So we have been going to mosques, we have been going to birthday parties, whatever, wherever people are gathering, we have been there to talk to them. What's the stake? And a good example is Khmer Main, which is a Cambodian immigrant group, and they are one of the oldest immigrant of color in the state of Maine. The Somali community is, we have a huge, vibrant Somali community. They have been amazing, just going places and, cooking dinners and trying to register people to vote. So yeah, we have been, but I'm still very anxious for tomorrow, as you can probably hear in my voice. So
Yes. Well, thank you, Fatima, for sharing those reflections. And what gives me hope is that we're not doing this by ourselves, right? There's like people in Minnesota and in Florida and in Maine and Wisconsin, all across the country that are super committed to. And I think that I see this on social media a lot, but I think about it specifically in this context of who's going to save us? It's going to be us, right? Ourselves, right? So we are what we have. We have each other. And I think that even stronger in the face of adversity, because for so many of us, adversity is how we got here. Adversity is the reason why we are here. So I want to close us out by, reflecting on that a little bit more. And hopefully that will give folks tuning in and all of us here a collective sense of hope. I think that what we're up against is very real. But so is our resilience, right? So is our drive and desire for a better tomorrow. So I'd like to just have everybody tuning in. I think that it goes without saying, the call to action here is to vote and to tell somebody that you know and love to vote. At this point, if you're an advocate, voting isn't enough. That doesn't cut it. We need you to bring 10, 20 more people to vote with you. Have your little network, have your little text thread. So if people are texting you and asking you, hey, who do I vote for tomorrow? That means that you're a trusted person in your community. That means that, more people will listen to you if you, engage folks. So I want to close this out by doing just a quick round robin, and maybe just in like 5 or 10 words, if you can tell us, in this, on this thread of hope, who are you dedicating your vote or your outreach to as we head into Election Day? So I can kick us off. I am dedicating my vote to my son, who is 1.5, and who I gave an Indigenous name to because I want to root myself and my family and everything that I do in the strength of my ancestors. So that's who I'm thinking about and taking with me to the polls tomorrow. I'll turn it over to Fartun. I think that Fortune is frozen, so we'll turn it over to you, Afifa.
Sounds good. Thank you. That was a deep question. I literally, I was like, oh, yeah. I think I have never taken any right that we have for granted, right? It's, we may call it, these are our birthrights, as humans, as advocates, as activists, as women, as part of a civil society, we may have these rights forever that we have started taking it for granted. So I would say that I am dedicating my vote to every single person who struggled, who died, who fought for me to have this right today.
Thank you so much, Afifa. We'll turn it over to you, Fortune.
Maybe my internet. I don't. So I am so happy that we're all talking about the same thing. One thing that we have to realize, and thank you for everyone who addressed the issue about the housing. It's real, and we are families, as we call it here at Israel. We are at the conveyor belt, and as voting is pushing our families off of the poverty conveyor belt. And I'm committed, our team is committed, and all of our allies, non-ethnic groups, I want to say thank you so much. Sometimes we get tired, and we're leaning on many people who don't look like us, who don't have the faith nor the color we have. And so we're committed, not we're going to say our fight continues, but now also the second generation, those who are educated, are showing how much we contribute. We're not just takers, we are actually contributing. In Minnesota, for example, most of the group homes, most of the healthcares are immigrants that are taking on and filling the gaps we need. So it's time to get our voices heard. And we have a WhatsApp. So I'm on WhatsApp all the time. Once we are done this, we're going live in Somali channels. So the work continues. I pray to God that all of us get what we are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you for the tune. And we'll close out with Fatima. Who are you? Who did you dedicate your vote to? Since you've already voted early.
I think I will dedicate my vote to the mothers who are pregnant and yet, cross ocean and walk continents to come here for the better life or the safety of their children, and for they believe in our humanity, and that's the only thing they again and again come. It's like, so I and those are the only reason I think I get up every day and do the work I do, because this work is tough, as you all know. And so I urge people, whoever is listening, if they can walk continent, you can go to the poll with your car. So go vote. So thank you.
Right. That's right. The longest journey has already been walked, right? Or swam, or however we got here, right? Those are beautiful words. And thank you all so much for the work that you do, for the leadership that you bring, for the gifts that you are in your community, because so many people are being moved to vote because of you. And that's only a little portion of the work that you do, I'm sure. So want to close us out. And tomorrow we got Chin Up. We are going to show up strong, hopeful, and determined and united. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you to our guests for their amazing work. And we hope you all have a great night and an even better election day. Have a good night.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Good
Bye.
night.
Bye.
Mhm.